She jumped from a 40-story building. She didn't die. She landed on a billionaire's car, and that moment changed everything. She was ready to die to save her nephew. Instead, fate made her marry a stranger. She needed money to save a child. He needed a wife to escape his family. Neither expected to fall in love. You wouldn't expect what happens next. Subscribe to this channel and like and comment, telling us if you liked the story. The wind screamed past Sarah's ears as she fell 40 stories through the Seoul night sky. This was it. Finally, the pain would end. No more hospital bills she couldn't pay. No more watching her nephew Marcus fade away in that sterile room, his 8-year-old eyes asking questions she couldn't answer. No more fighting a world that had taken everything from her. 3 seconds felt like eternity. Sarah closed her eyes, whispering one last apology to the little boy who'd called her mama ever since the car accident took her sister 6 months ago. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I tried so hard." The impact came with a deafening crash of metal and shattering glass. But she didn't die. Sarah's eyes flew open. She was lying in crushed leather seats, surrounded by twisted metal and broken glass. The roof of an expensive car had caved in around her like a cocoon. Her body ached, but she could move her fingers, her toes. Everything worked. She was alive. How was she alive? Car doors ripped open with violent force. Hands grabbed her arms, yanking her out. Men in black suits surrounded her, their faces hard and dangerous. Sarah's vision blurred as they dragged her to her feet. Through the chaos, she saw him. A man stood in the wreckage of what had been a luxury vehicle, his tailored suit somehow still perfect despite the destruction around him. He was young, maybe late 20s, with sharp features and eyes like black ice. He stared at her with an expression she couldn't read. Not anger, not shock, something else entirely. "You just destroyed a $500,000 car," he said in perfect English, his voice low and controlled. Sarah laughed. She couldn't help it. Hysterical giggles bubbled up from her chest. "I'm sorry about your car. I was trying to die." One of the bodyguards moved forward, but the man raised his hand, stopping him instantly. He stepped closer to Sarah, studying her face with unsettling intensity. "Boss, we need to move," a thin man in glasses whispered urgently. "The Park family meeting starts in 20 minutes, if you're late." "Cancel it." "But sir..." "I said cancel it." The man's eyes never left Sarah's face. "How are you not dead?" Sarah looked down at her hands. They were shaking but intact. No broken bones, no blood, just bruises forming under her brown skin. "I don't know, I don't understand. I fell 40 floors, I should be dead." "Yes, you should be." He tilted his head slightly. "What's your name?" Sarah Johnson." The adrenaline was wearing off now, replaced by confusion and a crushing sense of failure. She couldn't even die right. "Who are you?" "Kang Mi-sun." He said it like she should know the name. When she didn't react, something flickered across his face, almost like relief. "Get her to Dr. Yoon, private facility. No hospitals, no records." "Sir, if someone finds out you were involved." "Then make sure no one finds out." Mi-sun's voice carried absolute authority. He looked at Sarah again. "You're coming with me. We need to talk about why you jumped from my building." Before she could protest, the bodyguards were guiding her into another black car. Mi-sun slid in beside her, and the door closed with a heavy thunk that sounded like a prison cell locking. The drive through Seoul's nighttime streets passed in a blur. Sarah watched the neon signs and crowded sidewalks, feeling disconnected from reality. 20 minutes ago, she'd been ready to end everything. Now she was sitting next to a stranger who acted like surviving a 40-story fall was just an interesting problem to solve. They arrived at a sleek building with no signs. Inside, a doctor who asked no questions examined her thoroughly. Sarah sat on the medical table while Dr. Yoon pressed her ribs, checked her pupils, took x-rays. "Remarkable," the doctor muttered in Korean, then switched to English. "Severe bruising, minor muscle trauma, but no fractures, no internal bleeding, no head trauma. Medically speaking, this is impossible." "But I'm fine," Sarah asked. You're alive. That's beyond fine. That's miraculous. Dr. Yoon glanced at Mi-sun, who stood against the wall with his arms crossed. She should rest for a few days, but she'll recover completely. When the doctor left, Mi-sun moved to stand directly in front of Sarah. Now, tell me why you jumped from my building. The question hit her like a physical blow. Sarah felt tears burning her eyes, and she hated herself for it. She'd cried enough, but the words came pouring out anyway. My sister died 6 months ago, car accident. I became guardian to her son, Marcus. He's 8. He has a rare heart condition, needs surgery. Her voice cracked. I'm a translator, was a translator. Company downsized 3 months ago. I've been doing freelance work, but it's not enough. Not nearly enough. The surgery costs $300,000. I had 72 hours to come up with the money, or... She couldn't finish. Or your nephew dies. Mi-sun finished for her. Yes, Sarah wiped her eyes roughly. I tried everything. Loans, fundraisers, begging, nothing worked. I had nothing left to give him except life insurance money. If I died, he'd get enough for the surgery and more. It was the only way. Mi-sun was quiet for a long moment. His expression remained unreadable, but something shifted in his eyes. You have family in America. Just Marcus now. My parents died when I was 20. My sister was all I had, and now she's gone too. Marcus is everything. Why were you in Seoul? I came here for work 2 years ago. Better opportunities for translators. I was supposed to go back after my contract ended, but then Sarah died and I couldn't afford the move with all the medical bills piling up. She laughed bitterly. Ironic, right? I came here for a better life. Mi-sun pulled out his phone. The cracked screen showed a photo of a small boy with a bright smile, lying in a hospital bed. This is him. Sarah's heart clenched. Yes, that's my Marcus. Mi-sun stared at the photo for several seconds. Then his phone rang. He answered in rapid Korean, his voice sharp. Sarah caught enough words to understand. Family, marriage, obligation, inheritance. When he hung up, his jaw was tight with anger. He looked at Sarah with an expression that made her skin prickle. I have a proposition for you. Sarah tensed. Nothing good ever came from propositions made by dangerous men in private medical facilities at 2 in the morning. What kind of proposition? Mi-sun pocketed his phone and sat down across from her, his movements precise and controlled. I'll pay for your nephew's surgery, all of it, plus $100,000 for you to start over. Sarah's breath caught. What's the catch? Marry me. The words hung in the air between them like a bomb waiting to explode. Sarah stared at him, certain she'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Marry me. 1 year, convince my family it's real. Do that. And your nephew lives. You get financial security. Everyone wins. You're insane. Sarah stood up, ignoring the ache in her muscles. I don't know you. You don't know me. Why would you possibly want to marry a complete stranger? Mi-sun's expression didn't change. Because I need a wife, and you literally fell from the sky onto my car. Sit down. Let me explain before you refuse. Something in his tone made Sarah pause. She sat back down slowly, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she couldn't run, not when Marcus had 68 hours left to live. I'm the heir to Kang Corporation, Mi-sun began. We manufacture semiconductors, 15 billion in annual revenue. My grandmother controls the company and the family fortune. She's decided I need to marry within the month, or she'll give everything to my cousin and disinherit me completely. So marry someone else. Why me? Because she wants me to marry Park Jae-won. Our families have been planning this merger for years. Jae-won is beautiful, educated, from the right family. She's also manipulative, cruel, and only wants access to the Kang fortune. Mi-sun's voice held barely contained fury. I refuse to be a chess piece in my family's games, but if I show up with a wife they didn't choose, it disrupts everything. And you think your grandmother will accept me? A Black American woman who just tried to kill herself. My grandmother is superstitious. She believes in fate and destiny. You survived a 40-story fall without serious injury. That's not luck. That's divine intervention in her eyes. Mi-sun leaned forward. I'll tell her you slipped, that the fall was an accident. She'll see it as a sign from our ancestors. You were literally delivered to me." Sarah's mind raced. This was completely insane. Marry a stranger, move into his world. But the alternative was watching Marcus die. What exactly would this marriage involve? "You move into my penthouse. We attend family dinners and business events together. You learn enough Korean and Korean customs to be convincing. In public, we're the perfect couple. In private, separate rooms, separate lives. After 1 year, we divorce quietly. You go back to America with enough money to give your nephew the best life possible. And if your family finds out it's fake, then we both lose everything." Mi-sun's eyes hardened. "Which is why you'll be very motivated to make this work. Your nephew's life depends on it." The threat wasn't subtle, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to be angry. He was right. She'd do anything for Marcus, anything. "I want the surgery money transferred before we sign any papers," she said. "And I want it in writing that if something happens to me, Marcus gets everything." "Done." Mi-sun pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke in Korean for several minutes, then handed the phone to her. "My lawyer. Tell him your nephew's hospital information and your bank details." Sarah's hands shook as she provided the information. This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen in real life. But 15 minutes later, her phone buzzed with a notification. $300,000 had been deposited into her account. She stared at the screen, tears blurring the numbers. "Oh my God." "Make the call," Mi-sun said quietly. "Tell them to schedule the surgery." Sarah's fingers fumbled as she dialed the hospital in Boston. The night nurse answered, and Sarah barely got the words out. "This is Sarah Johnson, Marcus Johnson's guardian. I have the money. Schedule the surgery. Please schedule it now." The nurse's professional tone cracked. "Ms. Johnson, are you serious? You have the full amount." "Yes, it's in my account. Check it. Please check it right now." Minutes passed like hours. Sarah heard typing, hushed voices, then the nurse came back on the line. "Ms. Johnson, I'm looking at your account. The funds are there. I'm transferring you to Dr. Patel right now." Dr. Patel's voice came through, urgent but controlled. "Sarah, we can do the surgery tomorrow morning. I'll prep Marcus tonight. This is happening. Your nephew is going to be okay." Sarah doubled over, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. 5 hours ago, she'd been standing on a ledge, ready to die. Now Marcus was going to live. He was going to live. Mi-sun stood and walked to the window, giving her privacy. When Sarah finally composed herself, she wiped her face and looked at him. Really looked at him. He stood rigid, staring out at Seoul's skyline like he was alone in the universe. "Why are you really doing this?" she asked. "There has to be easier ways to handle your family." Mi-sun was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I know what it's like to be trapped, to have no choices, to watch the people you love suffer because you're powerless." He turned to face her. "You were willing to die for your nephew. I respect that. And I need someone who understands what it means to fight for something real." "I don't understand your world. I'll make mistakes." "Good, perfect wives are boring." Something almost like a smile crossed his face. "You have 1 hour to decide. Think carefully. This year will change your life completely. There's no going back once we start." Sarah looked at her phone. The hospital had sent a photo of Marcus sleeping peacefully, nurses prepping his room for surgery. Her baby boy was going to get his chance at life. She looked up at Mi-sun. "I'll do it. I'll marry you." "Then let's write your new story, Sarah Johnson, starting now." The contract arrived at dawn, delivered by a lawyer who looked like he hadn't slept in days. Sarah sat in Mi-sun's penthouse apartment, still wearing the clothes she'd tried to die in, reading through 47 pages of legal terms that would bind her to a stranger for the next year. "Sign here, here, and here," the lawyer said, pointing with a pen that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to. Sarah's hand hovered over the first signature line. "What happens if I fall in love with someone else during this year?" Mi-sun, who'd been standing by the window making phone calls, turned sharply. "Excuse me." "It's a valid question. What if I meet someone? What if you meet someone?" "You won't have time to meet anyone. You'll be too busy learning how to survive my family. Mi-sun crossed the room and sat across from her. But if you're asking if you're allowed to have affairs, the answer is no. One hint of infidelity and my grandmother will investigate everything. We can't risk it. So I'm supposed to be celibate for a year while pretending to be madly in love with you. Sarah felt a hysterical laugh building. This keeps getting better. I didn't say I'd make it easy. Mi-sun's eyes held hers. But I will make it worth it. Sign the contract, Sarah. Your nephew's surgery starts in 3 hours. She signed. The transformation began immediately. Mi-sun's team descended on the penthouse like a military operation. A woman named Jinai took Sarah's measurements without speaking, her face a mask of professional disapproval. A man named Tae-hyun handed her a phone, a credit card, and a thick folder. Your new identity, Tae-hyun explained in crisp English. Memorize everything. Your birthday is now listed as October 15th instead of October 12th. Close enough to remember, different enough to maintain privacy. Your backstory is that you met Mr. Kang at a business conference in Singapore 6 months ago. You've been conducting a long-distance relationship since then. Why the fake birthday? Sarah asked. Because people will try to find information about you. They'll search public records, social media, everything. We've scrubbed what we can and modified the rest. You're still Sarah Johnson, but now you're a version that fits into Mi-sun's world. Sarah felt sick. You're erasing me. We're protecting you, Mi-sun corrected. And protecting this marriage. My family has investigators on payroll. They will dig into your past. We need to control what they find. The next hours blurred together. Hairstylists, makeup artists, personal shoppers. Sarah stood like a mannequin while strangers pulled and prodded and transformed her. When they finally let her look in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back wore a cream silk blouse and tailored black pants that probably cost more than her entire previous wardrobe. Her natural hair had been styled into an elegant updo. Diamond earrings glittered at her ears, real diamonds. Tae-hyun had specified, nothing fake allowed. You look the part, Jinai said, her first words in hours. Now you need to act it. Act like what? Like a woman in love with Kang Mi-sun. Jinai's expression softened slightly. It won't be easy. The Kang family destroys anything weak. You'll need to be stronger than you've ever been. Before Sarah could respond, her phone rang. Boston General Hospital. Her heart stopped. Hello. Ms. Johnson, this is Dr. Patel. Marcus is out of surgery. It went perfectly. He's in recovery now, stable and strong. Your nephew is going to be just fine. Sarah's knees buckled. Mi-sun caught her before she hit the floor, his arms steady around her waist. She couldn't speak, could only sob into her phone while Dr. Patel explained the recovery timeline, the follow-up appointments, the excellent prognosis. When she hung up, she turned into Mi-sun's chest without thinking, crying tears of relief so intense they shook her entire body. For a moment, his arms tightened around her. Then he stepped back, his expression carefully neutral again. Your nephew lives. Now you keep your end of the deal. The coldness in his voice stung, but Sarah understood. This was business, nothing more. When do I meet your family? She asked, wiping her eyes. Tonight, dinner at the family estate, 7 o'clock. Mi-sun checked his watch. That gives you 9 hours to prepare. Tae-hyun will coach you on proper etiquette. Don't embarrass me. He walked away, leaving Sarah standing in the middle of his enormous living room, surrounded by strangers who turned her into someone else. The next 9 hours were brutal. Tae-hyun drilled her relentlessly on Korean customs. How to bow properly. The angle mattered. Too shallow was insulting, too deep was mocking. How to receive items with both hands. How to speak to elders with respect. Which topics were acceptable and which would get her immediately dismissed. Never discuss politics, religion, or money directly, Tae-hyun instructed. Never contradict the grandmother in public. Never show too much emotion. Korean families value composure and dignity. So basically, don't be myself, Sarah muttered. Exactly. Tae-hyun didn't smile. You're not Sarah Johnson from Boston anymore. You're Sarah Kang, wife of the family heir. Everything you do reflects on him. One mistake could destroy this entire arrangement. By 6 o'clock, Sarah's head pounded with information she'd never remember. She changed into a traditional hanbok that Jinai had selected, deep blue silk with silver embroidery. It was beautiful and uncomfortable and made her feel like a fraud. Mi-sun appeared at 6:30, wearing a sharp black suit. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. "You'll do. Remember, we're madly in love. We can barely keep our hands off each other. Sell it, Sarah. Your nephew's continued medical care depends on it." The threat was clear. This wasn't just about one surgery. This was about Marcus's entire future. In the car, Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Mi-sun noticed but said nothing. As they pulled up to an enormous estate surrounded by walls and guards, he finally spoke. "My grandmother will test you tonight. She'll try to break you to prove you're not worthy. Don't let her see fear." "What if I can't do this?" Mi-sun turned to face her, his expression harder than stone. "Then your nephew loses his medical coverage, the divorce happens immediately, and you go back to America with nothing. No pressure." The car door opened. Sarah stepped out into hell wearing a silk hanbok and a fake smile. The gate to the Kang estate loomed ahead like the entrance to a prison. Mi-sun took her hand. His grip was firm, possessive, exactly like a man in love would hold his wife. "Showtime," he whispered. The Kang family estate sprawled before them like a fortress. Traditional Korean architecture mixed with modern security, ancient wooden beams and stone pathways surrounded by cameras and armed guards. Sarah's heels clicked against the stones as Mi-sun led her toward the main house, his hand at the small of her back. To anyone watching, it looked protective, loving. But Sarah could feel the tension in his touch, the warning. "Don't mess this up." Inside, the house was even more intimidating. High ceilings, priceless artwork, furniture that looked like it belonged in museums. Everything screamed old money, power, legacy. Sarah felt like an imposter in her borrowed hanbok, playing dress-up in a world where she didn't belong. "They're waiting in the dining room," a servant whispered to Mi-sun in Korean. Sarah caught enough to understand. Her stomach twisted. Mi-sun's hand moved to her waist, pulling her closer. "Breathe," he murmured. "And whatever happens, don't apologize. Apologies show weakness." They entered the dining room, and Sarah's breath caught. The space was enormous, with a long table that could seat 20 people. But only 4 sat there now, watching them enter with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. At the head of the table sat a woman who could only be the grandmother. Small, elderly, but with eyes like black diamonds that missed nothing. She wore a traditional hanbok in deep purple, her silver hair pulled back severely. Her face was lined with age but sharp with intelligence. Next to her sat Mi-sun's parents. His father was tall, stern-faced, wearing an expensive suit and a permanent frown. His mother was beautiful in that cold, preserved way wealthy women achieved, perfect skin, perfect hair, perfect makeup, nothing warm or genuine. The 4th person was a young woman, mid-20s, with delicate features and designer clothes. She watched Sarah with barely concealed amusement. "Grandmother, father, mother, Hyjin," Mi-sun bowed slightly. "I'd like you to meet Sarah Johnson, my wife." The silence that followed could have shattered glass. Then the grandmother spoke, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. "Your wife, you married without family permission, without proper ceremony, without even informing us." Each question rose in volume until she was nearly shouting. Sarah felt Mi-sun tense beside her, but his voice remained calm. "I informed you I would handle the marriage situation. I have." "By bringing home a foreigner." Mi-sun's mother, Mrs. Kang, stood abruptly. Her English was perfect, her accent barely there. "Are you trying to humiliate this family? Do you have any idea what the Park family will say, what the board members will think?" "I don't care what they think," Mi-sun replied coldly. His father slammed his hand on the table. "You don't care. You're the heir to this company. Everything you do affects our reputation, our business relationships, our standing in society. Then perhaps you should have raised me to care about something other than reputation and business." Mi-sun's voice cut like a knife. But you didn't. You raised me to make my own decisions, so I did. Sarah wanted to disappear. She stood frozen as the family erupted in rapid Korean, voices overlapping in anger. Only the grandmother remained silent, studying Sarah with those unnerving eyes. Finally, the old woman raised one hand. Instantly, everyone fell silent. "Come here, girl." Sarah's heart hammered. Mi-sun's hand pressed gently against her back, urging her forward. She walked to the grandmother on shaking legs, remembering Tae-hyun's instructions. She bowed deeply, held it for 3 seconds, straightened. "Closer," the grandmother commanded. Sarah stepped forward until she was right next to the old woman's chair. The grandmother reached out with gnarled fingers and gripped Sarah's chin, turning her face from side to side like she was examining livestock. "You're not Korean." "No, ma'am, I'm American." "Obviously." The grandmother released her chin. "You're very dark." The words hung in the air, ugly and deliberate. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, anger and shame mixing. But she remembered Mi-sun's warning, "Don't show weakness." "Yes, ma'am, I'm black. Is that a problem?" Mrs. Kang gasped. Hyejin's eyes went wide. Mr. Kang looked ready to explode. But the grandmother's lips twitched, almost like she wanted to smile. "Everything about you is a problem." The grandmother leaned back in her chair. "Tell me how you met my grandson." Sarah had memorized the story, but her mind went blank under that piercing stare. She felt Mi-sun move closer, his presence steadying her. "I was working as a translator at a business conference in Singapore 6 months ago," Sarah began, her voice stronger than she felt. "Mi-sun was there for meetings. We met at a hotel bar. I'd just received bad news from home. My sister had died. I was crying. He sat down next to me and asked if I needed help." This part was almost true. The emotion in her voice was real because she was thinking of her sister, of Marcus, of everything she'd lost. "He didn't have to stop, he didn't have to care, but he did. We talked for hours. He made me laugh when I thought I'd never laugh again." Sarah looked at Mi-sun, and for a moment she let herself imagine it was real. "We started a long-distance relationship, video calls every night, visits when we could manage it. 3 weeks ago he proposed. I said yes." "And you married in secret because," the grandmother prompted. "Because I wanted her to myself for a little while," Mi-sun interrupted smoothly. "Before this, family could pick her apart and try to change her into something she's not." His mother's face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to us that way? After everything we've sacrificed for you, the education, the opportunities, the position you hold, you owe this family everything." "I owe you nothing." Mi-sun's voice was ice. "You gave me things, not love, money, not support. You trained me to run a company, but you never once asked if that's what I wanted." "What you want doesn't matter," his father roared. "You're a Kang, you have responsibilities." "And I'm fulfilling them. I'm married. I'll produce an heir. Isn't that what you demanded?" Mi-sun pulled Sarah against his side. "You just don't like that I chose someone you can't control." Mrs. Kang turned to Sarah, her eyes full of venom. "You think you can handle this life? You think you can survive in our world? Look at you. You're nobody. Nothing. You don't speak Korean, you don't understand our customs, you probably don't even know how to behave in polite society." Each word was designed to cut, to diminish, to destroy. Sarah felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "You're right," Sarah said quietly. "I don't know your customs, I don't speak your language fluently. I am nobody by your standards." She straightened her spine, lifted her chin. "But I know how to love, I know how to be loyal, and I know how to fight for what matters. Maybe those things don't mean anything in your world, but they mean everything in mine." The silence that followed Sarah's words was deafening. Mrs. Kang's perfectly made-up face twisted with rage. Mr. Kang looked ready to physically throw her out, but the grandmother's expression had changed. She was studying Sarah with new interest, like a predator reassessing its prey. "You have courage, I'll give you that," the grandmother said slowly. "Foolish courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless." She gestured to the empty seats. "Sit, eat. Let's see if you can survive a single dinner with this family before we discuss your future here." Mi-sun guided Sarah to a chair, sitting beside her. His hand found hers under the table, squeezing once. Whether it was reassurance or warning, Sarah couldn't tell. Servants appeared with course after course of elaborate Korean food. Sarah recognized nothing. She watched Mi-sun carefully, copying how he used his chopsticks, how he ate. But her hands were shaking so badly she dropped food twice. Mrs. Kang made a disgusted sound each time. "So tell me, Sarah," Hyjin spoke for the first time, her voice deceptively sweet. "What exactly do you do for a living, besides trap wealthy men into marriage?" "Hyjin," Mi-sun warned. "It's fine," Sarah said, though it wasn't. "I'm a translator, English, Korean, and French. I worked for international corporations before." She stopped, realizing she was about to mention losing her job, which wasn't part of the rehearsed story. "Before what?" Mrs. Kang pounced. "Before you decided marrying rich was easier than working." "Before I decided to focus on building a life with your son," Sarah corrected, keeping her voice level. "Mi-sun wanted me to have time to adjust to Seoul, to learn more about Korean culture. He's been very supportive." "How convenient." Mr. Kang set down his chopsticks with deliberate precision. "And your family, what do they think of this sudden marriage?" Sarah's throat tightened. "My parents passed away several years ago. My sister died recently. I don't have much family left." "How tragic," Mrs. Kang said, her tone suggesting she found it anything but. "So you have no one to vouch for your character, no background we can verify. For all we know, you could be a gold digger, a con artist, or worse." "Mother, that's enough," Mi-sun said sharply. "No, it's not enough. You bring this stranger into our home, into our family, and expect us to just accept her. We know nothing about her. She could be using you, manipulating you. Like you manipulated father into the marriage you wanted." Mi-sun's voice cut through his mother's tirade. "Like you manipulate every situation to maintain your position in society. At least Sarah is honest about who she is." Mrs. Kang's face went white, then red. "How dare you speak to me this way? I'm your mother." "You're a woman who gave birth to me. That doesn't make you a mother." Mi-sun stood abruptly. "We're leaving." "Sit down," the grandmother commanded. "Now." The authority in her voice froze everyone. Mi-sun slowly sank back into his chair, but Sarah could feel the fury radiating from him. The grandmother turned her laser focus back to Sarah. "You say you fell in love with my grandson in Singapore. Tell me, what exactly do you love about him?" It was a trap. Sarah knew it. Any answer would sound fake or calculating. But she thought about the man who'd caught her when she fell, who'd paid for Marcus's surgery without hesitation, who'd offered her a lifeline when she had nothing left. "I love that he sees people," Sarah said quietly. "Really sees them, not their utility or their status or what they can offer him, just them. He saw me at my absolute lowest and he didn't turn away." She looked at Mi-sun, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "He's trapped in a life he never asked for, playing a role he never wanted, but he still tries to be kind. That takes strength." Something flickered across Mi-sun's face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. "Pretty words," Mr. Kang said dismissively. "But love doesn't pay bills or run companies. Mi-sun needs a wife who understands business, who can navigate high society, who can be controlled," Mi-sun finished. "That's what you really want, someone you can mold into the perfect corporate wife. Well, you can't control Sarah. That's exactly why I chose her." The door to the dining room burst open. A woman swept in wearing a white designer dress that probably cost more than a car. She was stunning, perfect features, flawless skin, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. "I'm so sorry I'm late," the woman said in Korean, then switched to English when she saw Sarah. "The traffic was terrible. I hope I haven't missed dinner." Her smile was venomous sugar. "Oh my, and who is this?" "Jaewon," Mrs. Kang stood, suddenly warm and welcoming. "We weren't expecting you tonight." "I heard there was important family news. I couldn't stay away." Jaewon's eyes fixed on Sarah like a snake spotting a mouse. "You must be the American everyone's talking about. How exotic." Sarah felt Mi-sun tense beside her. This was Park Jaewon. the woman he was supposed to marry. Jaewon, this is Sarah, my wife, Mi-sun said coldly. Jaewon's smile never wavered, but her eyes turned to ice. Your wife? How fascinating. I must have missed the invitation to the wedding. She sat down gracefully in the empty chair across from Sarah. Tell me everything. I want to know all about how you two met. Every single detail. The grandmother watched this exchange with calculating eyes. Yes, Sarah. Tell Jaewon your story. I'm sure she's dying to hear it. Sarah realized with sinking dread that this was a test. Jaewon knew Mi-sun, knew his habits, his preferences, his history. She would catch any inconsistency in Sarah's story. We met in Singapore, Sarah began, but Jaewon interrupted immediately. Singapore? How strange. Mi-sun hates Singapore. He always says the humidity makes him miserable. He avoids going there whenever possible. Her smile widened. Isn't that right, Mi-sun? Mi-sun's jaw clenched. My feelings about Singapore changed when I met Sarah. How romantic. Jaewon turned back to Sarah. And you're a translator. How did you end up at a business conference? Those events are usually very exclusive, invitation only. I was working there, translating for executives. Which company? Sarah's mind raced. She didn't know which companies had been at a conference that never actually happened. I signed an NDA. I can't discuss specific clients. How convenient. Jaewon leaned forward. You know, Mi-sun, I'm hurt you didn't tell me you were seeing someone. We talk almost every week. You never mentioned a girlfriend. Because my personal life is none of your business, Mi-sun said flatly. But we're practically family. Our parents have been planning our wedding since we were children. I thought we were friends at least. Jaewon's expression turned wounded, but her eyes remained predatory. Unless this whole thing is some kind of rebellion, a way to avoid your responsibilities. My responsibility is to myself, Mi-sun shot back. No, Mr. Kang stood, his voice booming. Your responsibility is to this family, to this company, to the legacy we've built, and you're throwing it away for some woman you barely know. Sarah felt something snap inside her. She'd spent the entire evening being insulted, questioned, and treated like garbage. She'd watched Mi-sun defend her while his own family tore him apart. She'd kept her head down, played the role, swallowed her pride. But watching these people treat Mi-sun like property he was throwing away, something in her broke. She stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Enough. Everyone turned to stare at her. Mrs. Kang's mouth fell open. Mr. Kang looked shocked. Even the grandmother's eyebrows rose slightly. Sarah, Mi-sun started, but she held up her hand. No, let me speak. Sarah's voice shook, but not with fear anymore, with rage. I have sat here for 2 hours listening to you people insult me, question me, and treat me like I'm some kind of parasite. I've been polite. I've been respectful. I've played by your rules, but I'm done. How dare you? Mrs. Kang began. How dare I? Sarah's voice rose, surprising even herself. How dare you? You talk about family and legacy and responsibility, but do you hear yourselves? You don't love your son. You love what he represents. A chess piece. A business asset. Something to be traded and controlled. You know nothing about this family, Mr. Kang said coldly. I know enough. I know that Mi-sun can barely stand to be in the same room as you. I know he married a complete stranger rather than marry the woman you chose for him. That should tell you everything about how much he trusts your judgment. Jaewon's perfect mask cracked slightly. You're nothing but a gold digger who got lucky. You'll never survive in our world. Sarah laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to her own ears. Your world? You mean this world where people smile to your face while planning to destroy you behind your back, where money matters more than humanity, where a mother can look at her own son with such cold disappointment that he'd rather marry a stranger than ask her for love? She shook her head. You're right. I don't belong in your world. Thank God. Sarah, Mi-sun said quietly, standing beside her. But when she looked at him, she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Pride. And you, Sarah turned to Jaewon. You sit there acting wounded, but we both know you don't love Mi-sun. You love his money, his status, his family name. You want to be Mrs. Kang, but you don't actually want HIM. So stop pretending you're the victim here. Jaewon's beautiful face twisted with genuine anger now. You think you know him? I've known Mi-sun since we were children. I know his favorite foods, his pet peeves, his dreams. His dreams, Sarah interrupted. Really? Tell me then. What does Mi-sun dream about when he's not being the perfect heir? Jaewon opened her mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. Nothing came out. You don't know, Sarah said softly, because you've never asked. You've never seen him as anything except what he can give you. She turned to face the entire family. None of you have. And you have. Mrs. Kang's voice dripped with disdain. After 6 months of long-distance phone calls, you think you understand my son better than his own family. Yes, Sarah's voice was steady now, certain. Because I've seen him at 3 in the morning when he thinks no one's watching. I've heard the exhaustion in his voice when he talks about board meetings and family obligations. I've watched him smile for the cameras and die a little inside. She felt Mi-sun's hand find hers, squeezing gently. He's drowning in your expectations, and not one of you has noticed. Or maybe you noticed and just didn't care. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mrs. Kang looked genuinely shocked. Mr. Kang's anger had transformed into something harder to read. Even Hae-jin was staring at Sarah with new eyes. But it was the grandmother who spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. You have fire in you, I see that now. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane. But fire without control destroys everything it touches. Can you control your fire, Sarah Johnson? Or will you burn my grandson along with everything else? I'm not here to burn anything, Sarah said, meeting the old woman's eyes without flinching. I'm here to stand beside your grandson, to support him, to be the one person in his life who doesn't want to use him for something. How noble, Jaewon sneered. Except you are using him for money, for security, for whatever it is you really want. You're absolutely right, Sarah shot back and watched Jaewon's satisfaction turn to confusion. I am using him. He paid for my nephew's heart surgery, $300,000. My 8-year-old nephew was dying and Mi-sun saved his life. So yes, I'm using him. I'm using his kindness, his generosity, his willingness to help someone he didn't even know. She felt tears threatening but pushed them back. And you know what? He's using me too, to escape your control, to make his own choices. To prove he's more than just the Kang heir. We're using each other, but at least we're honest about it. Can any of you say the same? The room erupted. Mrs. Kang started shouting in Korean. Mr. Kang demanded they leave immediately. Jaewon stood up, her chair falling backward with a crash. Hae-jin sat frozen, eyes wide. But the grandmother held up one hand, and again, miraculously, everyone fell silent. She walked toward Sarah slowly, her cane tapping against the floor with each step. When she reached her, she stared up into Sarah's face for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she smiled, actually smiled. You survived a 40-story fall, didn't you? Sarah blinked, thrown by the sudden change in topic. Yes, ma'am. Impossible, medically impossible. The doctors said so. The grandmother's eyes gleamed with something that might have been respect. My grandson called me from the scene that night. He told me a woman fell from the sky and landed on his car, unharmed. Do you know what I told him? No, ma'am. I told him the gods were sending him a message. That fate was intervening in his life. The grandmother reached out and touched Sarah's cheek with surprising gentleness. I told him to pay attention because miracles don't happen by accident. Mrs. Kang gasped. Mother, you can't possibly believe. I believe what I see, the grandmother interrupted. I see a woman who stood up to this entire family without backing down. I see a woman who defends my grandson more fiercely than we ever have. I see a woman who survived the impossible. She turned to face her family. Maybe we're the ones who need to pay attention. Mi-sun's hand tightened around Sarah's. She could feel him trembling slightly, though whether from anger or relief, she couldn't tell. This marriage stands, the grandmother declared. Sarah will remain Mi-sun's wife. You will all treat her with the respect due to a member of this family. Anyone who disagrees can take it up with me directly. The threat was clear. No one argued. Jaewon grabbed her purse, her face a mask of fury. This isn't over, she hissed at Sarah as she swept past. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." "Neither do you," Sarah replied quietly. After Jaewon stormed out, Mr. and Mrs. Kang left without another word, their disappointment hanging in the air like poison. Only Hae-jin remained, studying Sarah with curious eyes. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen," Hae-jin said finally. "I haven't decided which yet." "Maybe both," Sarah admitted, suddenly exhausted. Hae-jin smiled, and it was genuine. "I like you, don't let them break you," she glanced at her brother. "And don't let him break you either, he's good at building walls." Then she was gone too, leaving Sarah alone with Mi-sun and the grandmother. Batch 7, 1,000 words. The grandmother gestured for them to sit back down. Sarah's legs felt like jelly as she sank into her chair. Mi-sun stayed standing, positioned protectively behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Sit, Mi-sun," the grandmother commanded. "I want to speak with both of you." He sat, but Sarah could feel the tension radiating from him. The grandmother poured herself tea with steady hands, the silence stretching uncomfortably. "Do you know why I built Kang Corporation into what it is today?" the grandmother finally asked. "Because grandfather left you no choice," Mi-sun answered. "When he died, everyone expected you to sell. Instead, you fought." "I fought because I had something to prove, because everyone underestimated me." The old woman's eyes found Sarah's. "I see that same fire in you, that same refusal to be dismissed." "With respect, grandmother, Sarah isn't you," Mi-sun said carefully. "She doesn't need to prove anything to this family." "Perhaps not, but she will need to survive them." The grandmother set down her teacup. "My son and daughter-in-law are furious right now. They will try to undermine this marriage at every opportunity. They'll investigate Sarah's past, look for weaknesses, any excuse to prove she's unsuitable." Sarah's stomach dropped. If they investigated too thoroughly, they'd find out about her suicide attempt, about losing her job, about Marcus's illness that coincided perfectly with her sudden marriage. The whole house of cards would collapse. "Let them investigate," Mi-sun said coldly. "They won't find anything." But his hand had moved to Sarah's under the table, gripping tight enough to hurt. A warning. They both knew how fragile their story was. "And Jaewon," the grandmother continued. "That girl is dangerous when she doesn't get what she wants. She'll come after you, Sarah. She'll smile and pretend to be your friend while plotting your destruction." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked. "If you've accepted the marriage, why warn me about your own family?" The grandmother's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Because accepting reality and liking it are two different things. You survived a 40-story fall. I believe in signs. I believe fate brought you to my grandson for a reason." She leaned forward. "But I also believe in being practical. Love without strategy is just beautiful suicide." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Beautiful suicide. That's exactly what she'd attempted. "Sarah needs time to adjust," Mi-sun said. "She needs to learn Korean, understand our business culture, build relationships slowly. She needs to get pregnant." The words dropped like a bomb. Sarah choked on air. Mi-sun's hand crushed hers. "Excuse me," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "You heard me. The fastest way to secure Sarah's position in this family is to give us an heir. Once she's carrying your child, no one can touch her. Not your parents, not Jaewon, not the board members who are already questioning this marriage." "No," Mi-sun said flatly. "That wasn't part of the agreement." "What agreement?" The grandmother's eyes sharpened. "What exactly did you two agree to?" Sarah's heart hammered. They'd said too much, revealed too much. But the grandmother was too clever, too experienced. She'd already sensed something was wrong. "We agreed to build our marriage at our own pace," Sarah said quickly. "Without family pressure, without expectations about timelines for children." "How modern," the grandmother said dryly. "How convenient, and how utterly impractical in your situation." She stood up, leaning heavily on her cane. "You have 6 months. If Sarah isn't pregnant by then, I'll know this marriage is a sham, and I'll take appropriate action." "Grandmother." 6 months, Mi-sun, that's generous. Most couples your age would have started trying immediately." She moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Sarah, that speech you gave tonight about not belonging in our world, you were right. You don't belong. But perhaps that's exactly what this family needs. Someone who refuses to play by our broken rules. She left, and the silence that followed felt like the calm after a hurricane. Sarah pulled her hand from Mi-sun's and stood up, packing to the window. Outside, the estate gardens stretched into darkness, beautiful and suffocating. 6 months! She wants me pregnant in 6 months. We'll figure something out, Mi-sun said, but he sounded uncertain for the first time. Figure out what? How to fake a pregnancy? How to find some random baby to present to your family? Sarah laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. This is insane. This whole thing is insane. You knew what you were signing up for. No, I didn't. Sarah spun to face him. I signed up for a fake marriage, playing house for a year, attending some dinners and smiling for cameras. I didn't sign up for your ex-girlfriend plotting my murder and your grandmother demanding I produce an heir like I'm some kind of breeding mare. Mi-sun stood and crossed to her in 3 strides. He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me. I will not let anything happen to you. Do you understand? You kept your end of the deal. Your nephew got his surgery. Now I'll keep mine. I'll protect you from my family, from Jaiwon, from anyone who tries to hurt you. And how exactly will you do that? Sarah's voice cracked. You can't even protect yourself from them. You're just as trapped as I am. Something flashed in Mi-sun's eyes. Pain, maybe, or recognition of truth he didn't want to face. You're right, he said quietly, releasing her shoulders. I am trapped. I've been trapped my entire life, but at least now I'm not alone in the cage. The words should have been depressing. Instead, they felt strangely intimate. 2 prisoners recognizing each other's chains. Sarah's phone buzzed. She pulled it out to see a video call from Boston. Marcus's name on the screen. I need to take this, she said. Mi-sun nodded and stepped back, giving her privacy. Sarah answered, and her nephew's face filled the screen. He looked pale but alive, smiling weakly from his hospital bed. Aunt Sarah, his voice was hoarse but happy. They said I can go home next week. Tears instantly blurred Sarah's vision. That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. You're so strong. The doctor said I'm gonna be okay. Like really okay. I can play soccer and everything. Marcus's smile faded slightly. When are you coming home? I miss you. Sarah's throat closed. She couldn't tell him she wouldn't be home for a year. Couldn't explain that she'd sold herself into a fake marriage to save his life. Soon, sweetie, I promise. But right now, I need you to focus on getting better, okay? Okay, hey, can I meet your husband? You said you got married. Is he nice? Sarah glanced at Mi-sun, who stood by the window pretending not to listen. Yeah, he's very nice. Does he make you happy? The question pierced her heart. He saved your life, Marcus. That makes me happier than anything. They talked for a few more minutes before Marcus got tired. Sarah ended the call and stood there holding her phone, tears streaming down her face. He's all I have, she whispered. My whole world. Mi-sun turned from the window. In the dim light, his expression was softer than she'd ever seen it. I know. If your family finds out the truth, if this all falls apart. It won't. He crossed to her again, and this time when he touched her, it was gentle. His thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. I promise you, Sarah, I won't let you lose him. Standing there in that enormous house, surrounded by people who wanted to destroy her, Sarah felt something shift. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. Somewhere between the suicide attempt and the family dinner from hell, this had become real. Not love, not yet, but something more substantial than a contract. We need a plan, she said, wiping her eyes. A real plan, because your grandmother isn't going to forget about the 6-month deadline. Mi-sun's jaw tightened. I know, but first we need to go home. You're exhausted and we both need to think clearly. In the car back to the penthouse, Sarah stared out at Seoul's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, people were living normal lives, falling in love naturally, building families without contracts and threats, but she wasn't one of those people anymore. What you said tonight, Mi-sun spoke into the darkness. About me drowning in their expectations. About being the only person who doesn't want to use me. He paused. Did you mean that? Sarah looked at him. In the passing streetlights, his face flickered between shadow and illumination. Yes, I meant it. Why? Because it's true. Because you saved Marcus without asking for anything except honesty. Because despite everything, you've never lied to me about what this is. She took a breath. And because I see you, Mi-sun, the real you, not the heir or the businessman or the perfect son, just you. He pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a quiet side street. When he turned to her, his expression was raw in a way she'd never seen. No one's ever said that to me before. Then everyone in your life is blind. Mi-sun laughed, and it sounded surprised, almost painful. Maybe they are, or maybe I've gotten too good at hiding. He reached across and took her hand. Thank you for standing up for me tonight, for defending me to my own family. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. We're supposed to be married. That means we're on the same team. Are we? His thumb traced circles on her palm. Because sometimes I forget this is fake. Tonight, when you were yelling at my mother, when you told Jaewon off, when you looked at me like you actually gave a damn, I forgot we were acting. Sarah's breath caught. Mi-sun. I'm not saying I love you. I barely know you. But I'm saying this thing between us, whatever it is, it's becoming more than what we signed up for. His eyes searched hers. And I don't know if that's good or terrifying. Both, Sarah whispered. Definitely both. They sat there in the quiet car, hands intertwined, two strangers who'd saved each other becoming something neither of them had planned for. 3 months passed like a fever dream. Sarah moved through her new life like an actress in a play she was still learning. Korean lessons every morning with a patient tutor named Mrs. Park. Business etiquette classes 3 times a week. Dinners with Mi-sun's family every Sunday, each one a carefully choreographed performance of marital bliss. And somewhere in all the pretending, the lines began to blur. Mi-sun started bringing her coffee in the morning, exactly how she liked it. Sarah began cooking his favorite foods, learning recipes from YouTube videos late at night. They fell into routines, watching movies together on the couch, him explaining Korean cultural references she didn't understand, her teasing him about his obsessive organization, him teaching her to read Hangul using children's books that made them both laugh. The separate bedrooms remained separate, but the walls between them were crumbling. Marcus video called every day, stronger and healthier. He'd started school again, joined a soccer team, was living the life Sarah had desperately wanted for him. Every time she saw his smile, she knew the price she'd paid was worth it. But the 6-month deadline loomed like a guillotine. We need to talk, Mi-sun said one evening, finding Sarah on the penthouse balcony. The same balcony where this had all begun, where she'd stood ready to jump. Sarah set down her wine glass. About your grandmother's deadline. 3 months left. Mi-sun leaned against the railing beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. She started asking questions, hinting. My mother called today to suggest we see a fertility specialist. Of course she did. Sarah closed her eyes. What do we do? I've been thinking about that. Mi-sun turned to face her fully. We have 3 options. 1, we fake a miscarriage. Tragic, but it would buy us time and sympathy. That's awful. Yes, but effective. His expression was grim. 2, we end this now. Divorce quietly, you take your money and go back to Boston with Marcus. You'd be set for life. He'd be taken care of. Sarah's chest tightened painfully. The thought of leaving made her feel sick in a way she didn't want to examine. And option 3. Mi-sun was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. We make it real. Sarah's heart stopped. What? This marriage, we stop pretending, we actually try. He ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. I know that wasn't the deal. I know you signed up for 1 year of acting and then freedom. But Sarah, these past 3 months, he stopped, struggling with words. I wake up looking forward to seeing you. I come home eager to tell you about my day. When you laugh at something I say, it feels like winning. And when you're hurt, I hurt. Mi-sun. I'm falling in love with you, he said, the words tumbling out like a confession. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But somewhere between the fake smiles and the rehearsed stories, I forgot I was supposed to be acting. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks. You can't love me. You barely know me. I know you cry during sad commercials but laugh during horror movies. I know you call your nephew every single day at exactly 6 p.m. Boston time. I know you're terrified of disappointing people but pretend to be fearless. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream. I know you hum when you're happy and go silent. Dear listeners, do you think Mi-sun and Sarah will fall in love with each other? Let me know your answer in the comments section.